This responsive reading is adapted from Alfred A. Duckett.
Where are we to go when this is through? We are the war-born. What are we to do?
Where are we to go when this is done? Will we slip into old accustomed ways, finding remembered notches one by one, thrashing hapless through the quickening haze?
Who is to know when the end has come? Old friends and family. But could we be strange to the sight and stricken dumb at visions of some pulsing memory?
Who will love us for what we used to be? Who now, or what we are, bitter or cold? Who is to nurse us with swift subtlety back to the warm and feeling human fold?
Where are we to go when this is through? We are the war-born. What are we to do? I'd like to share with you an ancient story that comes from the Hindu tradition. It's the story behind the tradition of Diwali, Festival of Light. Like all ancient stories, it's been told so many times by so many people across so many different parts of the world that it has many variations. This is just one of them. Once upon a time, there was a wealthy and powerful couple. As was the custom of the time, Rama, the husband, was described as a great warrior, and Sita as a beautiful wife. Though, truth be told, he could be very scattered and fearful, and she was very smart and strong, but they loved each other very much. There was a terrible king named Ravanda, who was so awful, so cruel and greedy, that he was described as a demon with 20 arms and 10 heads, so he could grab more and consume more than anyone with just 2 arms and 1 head. One day, he got a look at Sita and decided he wanted her as his wife. So he tricked Rama and kidnapped Sita. He snuck into their home, tied her up, tossed her into the back of his chariot, and dragged her off to his home in the city of Lanka, built on a plateau that seemed suspended between 3 mountain peaks. Sita, always resourceful, even though she was tied up, managed to take all the little beads and baubles off of her beautiful sari and drop them on the road so Rama could follow the trail of them glittering in the sun. It wasn't easy, so Rama was glad to meet up with Hanuman, the Monkey King, who was playful enough to enjoy looking for sparkly things, but fierce and tenacious enough to see the task to its end. But even he couldn't find Sita. So Hanuman sent messages to monkeys all over the world, and the monkeys managed to talk to all the bears, who contacted Hanuman and let him know where Sita was, on an island near Lanka, where Ravanda could watch her from a distance. Now this is where the story gets really incredible. The monkeys and bears had formed themselves into a kind of army to find Sita on behalf of Rama. But they couldn't reach the island on their own, so they began to build a bridge. Well, you know what happens next. The rest of the animals were so intrigued by what the bears and monkeys were doing, they joined, and they helped to build the bridge. And when they were finished, the animals rushed across the bridge with Rama and Hanuman leading them. The elephants, leopards, peacocks, and sambar deer all helped out, making huge sacrifices to help, fighting back all of the troops of Ravanda. Finally, they cleared the way so that Rama could kill Ravanda with a magic arrow. Ravanda was a demon after all, and only a magic arrow would do. And when he was dead, when his reign of terror ended, all the world rejoiced as Rama and Sita reunited and returned to their land. Rama and Sita didn't rest. They drove his chariot through the night. And all along the way, people lit oil lamps to light their way home. Good triumphed over evil.
ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಜಗದಾನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ
ಆನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಜಗದಾನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ
ಅರಿಶಿನಲಂಕೃತ ಕುಂಕುಮ ಶೋಭಿತ ಆದಿಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಿನಿ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಅರಿಶಿನಲಂಕೃತ ಕುಂಕುಮ ಶೋಭಿತ ಆದಿಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಿನಿ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಜಗತಿಯಲೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಸಂಭ್ರಮದಿಂದ ಕಾಯುತ್ತ ನಿಂದರು ವಂದಿಸುತ್ತ ಆನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಜಗದಾನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ
ಗಂಗಾ ಯಮುನಾ ಸರಸ್ವತಿ ನರ್ಮದಾ ಸಿಂಧು ಕಾವೇರಿ ಗಂಗಾ ಯಮುನಾ ಸರಸ್ವತಿ ನರ್ಮದಾ ಸಿಂಧು ಕಾವೇರಿ ಹರಿಯುವ ನದಿಗಳು ಪಾವನವಾಯಿತು ಪದ್ಮಿನಿ ನಿನ್ನಯ ಪಾದವ ಸ್ಪರ್ಶಿಸಿ ಆನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಜಗದಾನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ
ಶುಕ್ರವಾರದ ಪೂಜಾ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಸುಮನೀಯರು ಸುಮಮಾಲೆಯ ಹಿಡಿದು
ಶುಕ್ರವಾರದ ಪೂಜಾ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಸುಮನೀಯರು ಸುಮಮಾಲೆಯ ಹಿಡಿದು ಚಂದದಿ ಮಂಟಪ ಚಿಗುರಲೆ ತೋರಣ ನವರತ್ನದ ರಂಗೋಲೆಯ ಹಾಕಲು ಆನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಜಗದಾನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ
ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಜಗದಾನಂದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ
Today is the 4th day of Diwali, the 5-day Hindu festival of lights. Based on the lunisolar calendar, Diwali comes from the Sanskrit Deepawali, meaning row or series of lights. At its core, Diwali celebrates victory of light over dark, good over evil, knowledge over ignorance. But it's also a celebration of fertility for new generations and the legacy of ancestors, birth and death, joy and sadness. That's a lot of emotions for one festival to address. So it's a complex holiday with different themes for each day and in different regions of the world. Traditions emphasize different parts of the festival. Some focus on the relationships between husband and wife or brother and sister. Now, I'm no expert on Hindu festivals, but it seems to me like there's so much here about complementarity, balancing good with evil, life with death, joy with heartache, male with female, light with dark. So it makes sense that it would happen during this time of year, between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice, when we're losing 5 minutes of daylight at the beginning and end of each day, and we're seeking to preserve the light as best we can. For most Hindus in northern India, Diwali is a celebration of the return of Lord Rama to his kingdom after defeating King Ravana, a story that, like the Christmas story, gets retold to children every year in epic and enchanting detail. During Diwali, Sikhs commemorate the release of Guru Hargobind from a prison in the Mughal Empire. Jains have their own form of Diwali to mark the spiritual liberation of Mahavira, an older contemporary of the great Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. Mahavira taught that strict observance of vows is necessary for spiritual liberation. In other words, freedom can only come with discipline. Another balancing act. The biggest day of Diwali is the third day, which was yesterday. It's called Lakshmi Puja. Observed as an official state holiday, not just India, but also in other nations like Fiji, Guyana, Malaysia, Myanmar, Pakistan, Singapore, and Suriname, among others. Lakshmi Puja falls on the darkest night of the month, and it's a time when celebrants offer prayers to Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity. But Diwali can also be associated with other deities. Among the Newar Buddhists of Nepal, some celebrate Lakshmi, but others worship Kali, the goddess of time, power, creation, and destruction. Kali is a fearsome goddess, a warrior and mother, possessing all the greatest characteristics that are traditionally labeled masculine and feminine. She's a kind of gender warrior, breaking down all the unhelpful stereotypes about what women and men are supposed to be. She's another balancing act. During Diwali, it's believed that Lakshmi will visit every Hindu home, bringing with her prosperity and good fortune in the coming year. It's believed that she visits the cleanest houses first. And clean houses are believed to be free of clutter, ignorance, and negativity. So celebrants prepare by renovating their homes inside and out, then decorating them with lights to welcome her home. They often create complex and beautiful mandalas on their floors made of flowers, shells, stones, and small flames. Traditionally, the flames are in clay pot oil lanterns called rangoli, which people also line up in rows along walkways and rooftops, not only at their homes, but at temples and along rivers and in public squares. The effect is beautiful and dramatic. In the midst of all this light in the darkness, children visit their elders, employers give gifts to their staff, Merchants give gifts to their customers, and families gather to pay homage to Lakshmi and other deities, all while sharing feasts and an incredible amount of sweet treats. It's a time of finding balance between the personal and the public. Each person is encouraged to introspection, specifically to face their own demons and make vows to change themselves. And everyone is constantly engaging with each other as they travel, feast, pray, and stroll among the lights. And as if that weren't enough, there's fireworks. Indian-American journalist Vikas Chawla calls Diwali a combination of Christmas and the 4th of July. And that makes sense to me. On our summer holiday, we travel, gather, feast, remember the past, and shoot off fireworks. And like Diwali, our 4th of July is also about a celebration of liberation. Our independence from England almost 250 years ago, just as Diwali is a celebration of the liberation of Lord Rama, Guru Hargobind, and Mahavira. I can't imagine that back in 1776 our founders knew much about Diwali, but I would imagine that if they did, they'd probably relate to the Newar Buddhists and the reverence of Kali more than they would appreciate Lakshmi. You see, Kali is the goddess of time, power, creation, and destruction. 4 concepts the founding fathers grappled with as they sparred with each other over how to create a new nation based on the ancient concepts of democracy, fairness, and equality. The Declaration of Independence was important to them because it got this whole project started. But what really mattered to them was the Constitution, which came 23 years later. The Constitution, after all, is the covenant that binds us together as a nation, naming and defining the branches of government, creating our system of elections, and balancing the power of the states so that larger ones wouldn't silence smaller ones in the legislature. The Constitution is one big balancing act. You see, the founding fathers knew that sooner or later, and probably repeatedly, democracy would be challenged. They knew that one bad actor or one power-drunk political party could destroy it. Because of what they witnessed in the monarchies of Europe, they knew that power had to be tightly controlled. So they created a group of co-equal bodies to provide checks and balances. It sounds crazy, but the architects of the Constitution built gridlock into the system so as to avoid fast and furious destruction. They knew if it was possible to slow down the march of one power-hungry branch or party, even make it grind to a halt, it would prevent total collapse. The idea, of course, was that the American people would hate inaction so much that they could vote in agents of change or reason. They knew that it would take time, sometimes a generation or two, but the political pendulum would ultimately swing in the other direction, thwarting complete breakdown of government. In an interview last week, Steve Inskeep asked journalist Tom Ricks what the founding fathers would have thought about our current situation. Ricks is the author of a new best-selling book called First Principles, What America's Founders Learned from the Greeks and Romans and How That Shaped Our Country. Rick said that they'd be saddened by the divisiveness, but glad the system is working as designed. They built into it, through checks and balances, mechanisms to grind it to a halt, to prevent it from being taken over by one person or party or state. That's why they created systems like the Electoral College, 2 houses of legislature, and justices appointed for life. The founders, Ricks contends, abhorred power, having seen what it brought for the subjects of monarchies across the globe, especially the European countries of their heritage. In the closing chapter of his book, Ricks expresses gratitude that more people have power, visibility, and voice than ever before in our history. But he doesn't say what the founders would have thought of that. Heather Cox Richardson, in her recent book, How the South Won the Civil War, is pretty clear about what she thinks they would have thought. They'd be appalled by the very notion of women, poor people, persons of color, and First Nations members having the right to vote. Most of the founders believed that freedom for some could only be attained by denying freedom to others. There's a paradox in the balancing act of democracy that they were trying to create. A paradox whose legacy is still with us. In light of the recent election and the divisiveness we're currently experiencing, Rick asks the question, what kind of country have we become? He has 10 suggestions for putting us more on the course intended by the revolutionary generation. He suggests that we rehabilitate happiness, redefining it not as maximizing individual pleasure, but as each having the opportunity to find our place in the world. We should reclaim the definition of un-American with an emphasis on encouraging, rather than limiting, all rights of conscience, assembly, and speech, even when they're distasteful, as long as they pose no threat to the safety and well-being of others. Ricks insists that we need to enrich the political vocabulary by coming up with language that will, as he puts it, make America more American. Our language, like our laws, should be evolving as we evolve. We need to wake up Congress by sending them a message that it's not okay to be obstructionist. And the first place to start is with gerrymandering. The founders would have hated gerrymandering. We need to respect our core institutions and push them to uphold the founders' common notions about our nation. Inquiry, establishing facts, and intense debate about meaning. We need to promote, cultivate, and reward virtue in public life without counting on it actually happening. Every one of us would benefit from refocusing on the public good, rededicating ourselves to everything that, as Ricks says, falls under the category of general welfare. Education, transportation, infrastructure, the environment, and public safety in all its forms. Probably the most overwhelming challenge Ricks makes is to curtail campaign financing. Yes, he's talking about limiting and regulating the amount corporations, nonprofits, and individuals can give to a campaign. The founders had absolutely no problem with limiting or regulating. There are 2 things we can each do, according to Ricks, that can make a difference in ending the gridlock and surviving these times. The first, know your history. Read, ask questions, and find the answers for yourself. Go to original sources. Don't just accept the sound bites you're being offered. And the second is don't panic. We'll get through this. Lots of polls show that Americans believe that we are living at the lowest point in American history. Thomas Jefferson believed the same thing. And he was part of the generation that not only got us through, but found a way for the future. Ricks writes, our national political gridlock sometimes is not a bug, but a feature. It says our system is working. The ballot box is the basic building block of our system. We should appreciate how strong and flexible our system is. Strong and flexible. Balance. It's all about finding balance. Through personal reflection and introspection, through respect for the past and commitment to the future, finding light in the darkness. The principles upheld by our founders sound a lot like the principles of Diwali. Now, I'm not saying that we should all be going out and celebrating Diwali. For the vast majority of us, it's not our festival to celebrate. But on this fourth day of Diwali, it might be a good idea to take a cue from Hinduism and take some time to clean up. Clear our minds of clutter, ignorance, and negativity. Take some time to figure out what each of us has done to make things the way they are right now, and what we can do to rediscover the promises of the democracy offered by the founders of this republic.
Set. A million miles past the finish line, my heels lift at this imaginary starting line. The trigger slips. My heart was racing well before its time's running out. It's always running out on me as the road up ahead disappears. Though it's all been said, and this empty dictionary is all that's left, I'll try to change the world in a single word. My hands are shaking, ready or not. Invisible ink, well, it's all I've got. So I'll concentrate and pick from these barren trees. Time's running out, it's always running out on me. And every road I discover disappears under my feet. Some call it reckless, some call it breathing. Have I said too much or not enough? Is it overkill or is it giving up? To measure out the distance of an echo's reach. If it's all broken mirrors and a chance roll of the dice, then I'll risk everything for a glimpse of accidental light. Time's running out, it's always running out on me. And every road I've discovered disappears under my feet. Some call it reckless, I call it breathing.
I'd like to share with you now a reading, a poem by Marta Valentin. Coming clean is another way of finding peace in one's heart. It is looking up at the crisp, clear lavender sky to find a reflection of my own soul spelling out God's prayer among the wisps of clouds. Love thyself, and then you will truly love me. Coming clean does not wipe out imagined slates of guilt and suffering. Does not imply traveling a continuum from evil toward what is good, blessed, pure, untarnished. To come clean is what pounds in my heart, inviting me into its rhythms, inviting me to create music out of cacophonous sounds and dance from beats richly textured and interwoven by faith, hope, love. I am coming clean as the droplet pearls from God's own forehead bless and sweat with me as I wash away layers of disillusioned grime, disheartened dirt, crimes of passion committed against my own heart. I am coming clean because I want to go. I am tired of standing still, making a quiver and a quake for truthful moment. I am coming clean so that I can say I have come clean to you, to me, and to this life. It's the season of giving. In the next few weeks, each of us is going to be asked repeatedly to give every organization under the sun, all of them, well, nearly all of them, worthy of support. Give to them as generously as you can. Support organizations doing good work, like this month's partner organization, Woman Safe of Geauga County. But before you do that, please make sure that your pledge is up to date by sending your regular installment into our office. And if you're watching this without ever having pledged to financially support the work of this congregation, please consider making a donation. I promise we're one of those organizations worthy of support. Thank you for being here with us today. I'd like to end with a little something by Marge Piercy. I'm not sure how well it goes with the rest of the service, to be honest, but I hadn't used this in a few years, and lately it's been bringing me a lot of comfort. I hope it does the same for you. 2 people can keep each other sane. 3 are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With 6, you can hold a fundraising party. 12 make a demonstration. 100 fill a hall. 1,000 have solidarity. It goes on, one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again after they say no. It starts when you say we.
We join hands in Unitarian Universalist fellowship,
pledging ourselves to an individual religious freedom,
which transcends all creeds, not to think alike,
but to journey together.